So let's have a look at Nessus. Developed by Tenable Network Security, is one of the most popular and capable vulnerability scanners. Nessus Professional is a commercial product. In addition, a free Nessus Home version is also available, though it's limited and only licensed for home network use. Nessus allows scans for the following types of vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities that allow a remote hacker to control or access sensitive data on a system. Misconfiguration, for example, open mail relay, missing patches, etc. Default passwords, a few common passwords, and blank or absent passwords on some system accounts. Nessus can also call Hydra, an external tool, to launch a dictionary attack. Denials of service against the TCP/IP stack by using malformed packets. In preparation for PCI DSS audits. Now, in a typical operation, Nessus begins by doing a port scan to determine which ports are open on the target, and then tries various exploits on the open ports. The vulnerability tests, available as subscriptions, are written in NASL, Nessus Attack Scripting Language, a scripting language optimized for custom network interaction. Nessus is constantly updated, with more than 70,000 plugins. Key features include remote and local authenticated security checks, a client-server architecture with a web-based interface, and an embedded scripting language for writing your own plugins or understanding the existing ones. Optionally, the results of the scan can be reported in various formats, such as plain text, XML, HTML, and LaTeX. Now, Nessus is not embedded into Kali, so let's download it to install and use in our Kali. Open the browser and search for Nessus Home Download in Google. I think you already know that Nessus Home is the name of the free version of Nessus. So discard the ads. The first link is Tenable's Nessus homepage. We need an activation code to use Nessus Home, and we have to register for an activation code. So you'd better register with your exact names and email addresses. Since I have previous registrations, I'd like to register with a public name and mail address. Ethical Hacker is the name and surname. ethichack@yopmail.com. Click register when you're okay. Now the next page is where you can find the download link for Nessus Home. The page says that an email containing my activation code has been sent to my email address. So let's open a new tab and look to see if we've got the activation code. I go to yopmail.com/ethichack, which is the URL address of ethichack@yopmail.com email address. And here's the email with the activation code. Now go back to the homepage of Nessus and click Download. Here's a list of the binaries of Nessus Home. Our Kali is a 64-bit Debian, so I'm going to click and download this one. And save the file. Now let's install the packet that we downloaded. I go back to the browser to see the location to where the file has been downloaded. It's downloaded in the Downloads folder. Now open a terminal screen and go to the folder using cd command. To install the packet, use dpkg Linux command with iparameter. And last, type the file name. Remember, you can use the tab key to complete the file name and hit enter. The installation is completed within a few seconds. Now let's look at the messages. It says we should start the Nessus D daemon to start Nessus Home. And then we can connect to the web interface of Nessus, which will be served at port 8834. This is the default port of Nessus Home's interface. So use the service command to start the Nessus D daemon. First, I want to look at its status. It's inactive at the moment. Type service Nessus D start to start Nessus D daemon. Now, let's look at the ports of our Kali, which happen to be in listen mode. Use the netstat command with TNLP parameters And here it is. Port 8834 is being listened to by Nessus D. Now we can access Nessus Home's web interface. So go to the browser and type 127.0.0.1:8843 and hit enter. As you know, 127.0.0.1 stands for the local host. You can use the IP address of your CALI instead. It doesn't matter. Whoops. Nessus service is an HTTPS service. So we have to use HTTPS at the beginning of our URL. So our browser says that the connection is not secure because the local certificate of Nessus is not registered by a CA, a certificate authority. No worries, click Advanced and then Add Exception and click Confirm Security Exception. And here's the first interaction with Nessus Home's web interface. So the next step is to set up Nessus Home. First step is to create an account. Select a username for yourself and add a password. Click Continue. The next screen asks the scanner type and the activation code, which has been sent to our email address while we were downloading the Nessus Home's installation packet. Here are the scanner types. We'll use Nessus Home, so leave the first option selected. Now I go to the email sent by Nessus and copy the activation code and paste it into the related field. Then click Continue. As soon as setup is complete, Nessus downloads and initiates the latest plugins, which will be used in the scans by Nessus. First, it downloads the plugins according to your connection speed. Now, it may take a few minutes, so be patient. Now it's compiling the plugin. This step may take longer than the download step, so you might want to go and grab yourself a cup of coffee. And there it is. The initialization phase is complete. Welcome to the Nessus interface. At last, we are ready to start a Nessus vulnerability scan. This is the main page of the Nessus web interface. We are in My Scan section of Scans tab. At the upper left corner, click New Scan. First, Nessus asks for the scanner. We have seen them before, so here we can choose the most suitable one for our scan. But in the home version of Nessus, unfortunately, some scans are disabled. If you click Internal PCI Network Scan, for example, the application redirects you to the Nessus website to buy Nessus Professional. There are also available scanners like Basic Network Scan, or alternatively, go to User Defined tab and select your own policy. This is the policy we defined in the previous lecture, so I chose this. Now, give a name to your scan. As you can see in the right side of the name field, the required fields are identified by Nessus. So write a description if you want. Select the folder for the outputs and define the targets. You can list the hosts in Targets field one by one. I want to scan my two systems now. 99.139 is OWASP BWA, and 99.206 is my Metasploitable system. So if you want multiple IP addresses, just put a comma in between them. You can also define an IP block or a range, just as you remember in the Nmap lectures. Or alternatively, if you have a file that contains a list of the hosts that we also covered earlier, you can add that file using the Add File link in the Upload Targets field. So now we're ready to launch this scan. At the bottom of the page, select Save, or click the down arrow button and select Launch to start the scan immediately. I choose Launch. It first saved the scan and then launched immediately. So while it's scanning, let's see some of the parts of Nessus interface. At the left, you see the folders. Next to My Scans folder, it says that I have one active scan. And in My Scans page, you see the scan that we just started. If you click on it, you see the scan details. There are three tabs here: Hosts, Vulnerabilities, and History. When you click on the Vulnerabilities tab, you see the vulnerabilities found during the scan. Here, we already have some results. Now click the Hosts tab to turn back. These are the systems that we defined as targets: OWASP, BWA, and Metasploitable. At the right, you see the severity levels of the vulnerabilities. Nessus classifies vulnerabilities into 5 levels. Informational level quickly identifies non-vulnerability information, which is, well, nice to know, and separates them from the vulnerability detail, which is need to know, right? Low level identifies flaws that might help an attacker to better refine his attack, but by itself, that flaw won't be sufficient for a compromise. Medium level identifies that some information is leaking from the remote host. An attacker might be able to read a file he should not have access to. High level identifies that the attacker can read arbitrary files on the remote host and or can execute commands on it. And critical level vulnerabilities are the most important vulnerabilities for us. These vulnerabilities can be exploited by a tool, and in most cases, the attacker does not need to make an extra effort to exploit them. So let's fast forward the scan. Now, on the right side of each host row, you can see the status of the scan of that host. 100% means the scan of that host is complete. Did you know you can ping the hosts sometimes to understand that they're still alive? And finally, our scan is completed in 4 minutes, which is a very fast scan for a vulnerability scan. Now let's click the Metasploitable to go to the vulnerabilities of that host. Here are the vulnerabilities of the Metasploitable machine found by this scan. Please note that there might be other vulnerabilities that cannot be found by Nessus with the policy that we used. The vulnerabilities are ordered by severity levels by default, and I think that's a good idea. The vulnerabilities in the critical severity level are the most important ones for us again. So click on a vulnerability to see the details of it. So here we have the name of the vulnerability, a brief description, a solution method, and the links to learn more about it, and last, the host and the port where the vulnerability lives. At the right side of the screen, you see some additional and important information about the vulnerability. So for this particular vulnerability, Nessus says that we can exploit it using Core Impact, which is a commercial and very powerful exploitation tool. And here are the scores of this vulnerability. 10.0 is perfect for us. So click Back to Vulnerabilities to go back to the list of the vulnerabilities. Here there is another vulnerability which says the VNC server is running on the host and its password is password. If that's true, and if there's no additional measure to protect the host, we can access that host very easily. I'll show you. Let's test it. Go to the terminal screen and run the VNC viewer by typing xVNC viewer and hit enter. If you don't have VNC viewer installed on your Kali, type apt-get install xVNC viewer and hit enter. Type the IP address of Metasploitable as the VNC server and hit enter. And now type password as the password and hit enter again. And voila, we are in the system. I use the womi Linux command to learn the user that I've caught, and uname-a to learn the operating system and the kernel details. Ifconfig to see the information about the network interfaces, etc. Now type rm-rf/. No, just kidding. Don't do that. Don't.